you know, with it, say for example with dairy, that would be a big thing that I would often ask people to come off, because especially in our damp climate in Ireland, dairy is really bad for a lot of issues. It causes a lot of mucus, it can cause a lot of like pain in joints, it can stop people from sleeping. But within cheese, there's actually a molecule called casomorphines. So they actually act in your body like morphine, because cheese is addictive. And science knows this, yet when someone says, oh, like I have a friend who says that cheese is her bad boyfriend who she can never give up, and that's it, because people are addicted to it,
That's Siobhán Carroll, and this is the Yoga Life Podcast. Hello, what's good with you? How are you? Where are you? No need to answer that, either of those questions, because I can't hear you, but hopefully you can hear me. This is the Yoga Life Podcast, and it's about a podcast about yoga and life. So I thought, call it what it sounds like and what it's about. Today I have with me a yoga teacher, a naturopath, a herbalist, and a Harry Potter fanatic. That's it. She's emphatic. She likes Harry Potter a lot. So we actually don't talk about Harry Potter in this at all, probably because I know nothing about it. Never read a Harry Potter book. Can't even say it. And I don't really get it. I don't get the whole Harry Potter thing. So am I missing out? Let me know, and maybe I'll get on that. Never seen any of the films either. And I'm English as well, so soz. Anyway, I have with me Siobhán Carroll, the Nerdy Naturopath. Siobhán is a teacher in the same studio I teach in the Elba Room, and also she practices from there as well with all her herbs and stuff. Naturopathy is something I'm really interested in, even though I struggle to say the word, because I have experienced health issues myself that have been healed or cured by using plants. And it blew my mind. I thought, wow, this is something that I never considered could help me. I always thought the doctor knew best. But nature is powerful. And that's why I wanted to get Siobhán on. And actually, tell a lie, she was recommended by someone. So shout out to Elisa Luby, who recommended I get Siobhán on. And I got a lovely little segue actually. I'm doing a retreat with Elisa. Seamless. I'm hosting a retreat with Elisa in September this year, so 2019. And he said 17. So if it's gone past September 2019, you listen to this, I'm sure the retreat was amazing. But if it's before that date, then there's spaces available to book. It's going to be in Wicklow on the 13th, 14th, 15th of September. And we're going to have hot tubs, hiking, hammocks, and maybe some other things that start with H. But loads of yoga, yin yoga, some yang yoga, courtesy of myself, and vegan food, all fully catered. I've been to this retreat centre myself about 2 years ago as a guest, so I've sussed it out. It's really nice. And if, as well as that, the other thing I want to talk about is my workshop, which is in May. Workshop in May in the Yoga Hub, Heels Overhead, which is my rather creative name. I don't know if you can patent a name, but please don't steal it, because it took me a while to think of it. And if you do steal it, I just won't be your friend anymore. So it's a hands-down workshop. The last one sold out, which is in March. So hopefully we get a good attendance for May. The capacity is 25 people. If you want to book the retreat or the workshop, you go to my website kevinboyleyoga.ie / either events or retreats, or if you go to the main site, you'll be able to see everything there. Also, if you find value from this podcast, there is a way that you can show the love, and that is sharing it on your Instagram story. So just share it, usually by Spotify is the easiest way. Then other people can just click and listen to it on Spotify straight away without having to pay anything. And you can also support directly via the kevinboyleyoga.ie / support the Yoga Life podcast, where I have a system set up where you can donate a one-off or monthly or weekly amount if you find that this podcast is helping you in your life, in your career, and that would be fantastic. And people who do decide to support via that method have priority over tickets for events, retreats and workshops. If you would like to support and via our sponsors, then let me tell you a little bit about them. The first one is Apparel. So if you're a fella, you know a fella, and who does yoga, or you do yoga, and you like to look well, then Apparel is the company for you. I met with them last year with their founder Louis in their offices in Shoreditch, and I wear a lot of their clothing. In fact, they're sending me, I believe, their spring collection, which is I'm like a kid at Christmas. Every time the postman comes, I think it's my own delivery, but not yet. I'm sure it's on its way. But yes, they provide very comfortable clothing for practicing yoga, movement in general, and it's all eco-friendly. So everything they do is taking the environment into account, even down to their packaging. It's very conscientious, very ethical in their approach. And if you'd like to wear some nice clobber for your practice and your daily life, you can go onto their website, om.com/the Yoga Life Podcast. When you choose your garms, your threads, what you want, then you put in Kevin at checkout to get 15% off. That's Kevin, Kevin, at checkout to get 15% off your order, which is pretty good. Next, I have 108 Asana Yoga Sequencing Cards by Yogaroo. Ruth is a lady, again, I always like to meet the people that I'm working with. Met her, was it earlier this year? Or was it last year? I think it was early this year, 2019. And we had a cup of tea, and I looked at her lovely products. She designs these sequencing cards for your home practice. So they have everything on them that you need. They've got their alignment cues, they have the level guides, the anatomy coding, and all the English to Sanskrit translations, which is really handy. Something I really struggled with when I was doing my teacher training. But you don't have to be a teacher to get these cards. They're good for anyone who does yoga. So that's you. Check them out by going to yogaroo.ie, and if you put in the promo code again, Kevin, you get 10% off. So that's Kevin for 10% discount off your sequencing cards. That's all my business talk done. I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, the best way is either through my website, you can sign up to the newsletter, or find me on Instagram, kevinboyleyoga. Enjoy. Hey Siobhán.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
I can indeed.
Yeah, this is take 2 of our podcast because last time I messed up.
Sure. This is life, eh?
I mean, there's a reason why most people don't have a podcast. I heard someone say the other day at another podcaster, everyone's starting a podcast, but they're really not. No, everyone has an Instagram account or a lot of people have Facebook, but very few people have a podcast because so much can go wrong. So here we are.
It's a big commitment as well. Like, a lot of people have said to me, Siobhán, you should get a podcast, and I think maybe just because I love talking or something. I'm not really sure why, but yeah, it is. It's a big commitment and a lot of work. So fair play to you. Yeah,
it does. I mean, it's. I love doing it, but just sometimes when one little thing, little button you didn't push, and then the stuff can't be used. But anyway. It's all good.
It's a good off the mat yoga practice.
Exactly, very good. So you're a naturopath, aren't you?
I am.
Okay, and I'm saying that correctly, aren't I?
Naturopath, yeah.
Thank you.
Some people say naturopath. I'm fine with that too.
Oh really?
Yeah. The problem is when people start calling me a naturalist and think I spend a lot of time nude.
So what's a naturist? Is that someone who just likes the outdoors?
I'm not really sure. I think there's
a naturalist is a naked person.
Yeah.
And a naturist is someone who likes the outdoors.
Maybe,
I think.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm one of them too, then.
So what does a naturopath do?
So I kind of like to think of it as a general practitioner for wellness. So kind of like a GP, but for holistic health, Although unlike a GP, we definitely spend more time with our clients. It's kind of the big difference between what we do and what GPs or other doctors would do. And also the fact that I don't prescribe medications. I'm not trained to do that, although naturopaths in the US are trained as that they can dispense pharmaceuticals and things as well. So, but it's just not part of my training. It's not something I really want to get into either, So yeah, work in lots of different ways. So for me as a naturopath, I'm also a herbalist, and I've studied plant-based nutrition and Ayurveda, and these are the kind of things that I bring in my kind of toolkit as a naturopath. And then other people who trained in my college, let's say, may have studied acupuncture instead of herbal medicine, and so they'll use acupuncture as well as their other naturopathy skills. So what we'll do is we'll give out diet, lifestyle advice, tips to help sleep better, or to whatever it might be, to get an overall balanced lifestyle, I suppose.
So being a herbalist, this is something that interests me. I've mentioned this story before, but quick background about the healing power of plants in my experience, is that when about 4 years ago, I had gut issues and I didn't know what was wrong, went to the GP. He started Googling my symptoms and wrote down the words colitis on a post-it note. Said you should go to the chemist and buy these steroids. They cost about €140 for 6 weeks supply. And I thought, okay, well, look, I'm so desperate at the moment. I'll do anything now. And when someone in a white coat tells you, you feel like, okay, that's good enough for me. Went to the chemist, bought the steroids, and then when I got on the Lewis to go to work, I started to read and Google the names, the side effects, and there was endless amount of side effects.
And so few people get to even that point where they look at the side effects until they're experiencing them all. It's so well done.
Yeah, and I thought, and then on the Lewis, I was thinking, or the Lewis, by the way, is the train in Ireland, or the tram, should I say? I was thinking, this isn't me. I'm not the kind of person, I wouldn't even take an aspirin. I'm not the kind of person to do this. So I thought, I'll give it a day, I'll sleep on it. And I got into work, sat down, the guy who was sitting opposite me, he said, oh, you don't seem your normal self, you seem a bit down in the dumps. And I told him my situation, and he said, oh, colitis, I had that. And I said, what happened? He said, well, they put me on these steroids. I was on them for a while and my body quickly got used to them. I had to up the dosage, and then it just got to a stage where they had to surgically remove my colon.
Wow.
So that frightened me.
Yeah.
And then I thought there has to be another way. So I tried to return the steroids to the chemist. They said they couldn't, even though I didn't open them because, whatever they're... But anyway, so I couldn't get my money back, so damn it. And then I started Googling more about other alternative therapies, went to the health food shop, and the girl in the health food shop told me about oil of oregano. And I remember the bottle was maybe €8, and I felt I begrudgingly paid €8 because I thought, this is just a plant, and like, how is this going to help me compared to something that's been made in a lab by experts? And within a week, I was 100%. My digestion was spot on. My elimination was fantastic.
Nice.
Yeah, TMI perhaps, but and I thought that was an eye opener for me, thinking this can really work. Do you get a lot of people coming to you with gut issues?
Yeah, gut issues is a huge thing nowadays, especially. But even if people aren't maybe coming in with any kind of digestion related problems, we go through a full case history of everything that's going on in all the different parts of your body, and every consultation we talk about poo, so it's never TMI with me or with the naturopaths in general, but everyone that I see has some sort of gut healing that needs to happen, with the general diet that people eat today, but even people eating a really good diet, if they're not eating organic, the pesticides and herbicides on the food often cause a lot of gut damage as well. A lot of the times people coming in with mental health issues have gut issues at the core of it. Serotonin, the vast majority of it is made, just like our happy hormone, it's made in our digestive system. So much of that is related to our digestive health, and people don't realise that a lot. And then when we're in our kind of Western medical system we have at the moment, everything's so separated. So maybe someone has sleep issues, but actually it's because they're eating so late at night and it's keeping them up, or maybe they are a fiery kind of person and they're eating too many spices, which stops them sleeping, or it could be, there's so many different things. This is why we have like a long kind of 2-hour initial consultation, 1.5 to 2 hours, because we really need to look into all these different things that are contributing to whatever someone's presenting with, you know.
Yeah, and I think that the gut is, I mean, who was the philosopher? Socrates? Or
Hippocrates, maybe.
Oh, Hippocrates, that was it. He said about, if let food be thy medicine.
Yeah, that's him.
And there's supposedly neurotransmitters in your gut. So yeah, what you eat massively affects your mental health. What are your thoughts on CBD oil?
CBD oil is an interesting one. I just read a study this week that said that a lot of the benefits of the plant, of the hemp plant or cannabis plant, is from the THC, which is the kind of psychoactive component, rather than the CBD. As a herbalist, generally the way I work is I work with whole plants. So, for example, an example people are very familiar with now is, say, turmeric. You can buy an extract of curcumin in the health food shops, and that's kind of one of the very active components in turmeric. But for me, I'll always use the whole turmeric plant, because there's so many more things within the plant that make it work synergistically and make it work well in our bodies. Another example, you mentioned aspirin there. So salicylic acid is the basis of aspirin, and it initially comes from plants. So it came from either willow bark or meadowsweet. They're two different plants that we use. And what's really interesting about aspirin is when you isolate out that salicylic acid, which is one plant compound. So it is a plant-based medicine in some ways. Now it's kind of a chemically produced kind of copy of that, but when you take that salicylic acid separately, it causes a lot of gut problems. People might get ulcers or things like that from taking too much aspirin. But what's wonderful about taking the whole plant is they actually have a lot of, say, tannins in the oak bark, or meadowsweet has kind of antacid compounds that stop the acidity and things that happen from the salicylic acid. So when you've got the whole plant working together, it works much better. And that's my concern with CBD oil, is that we're extracting the, this one compound, or, it's not necessarily one compound. There's so many different types of CBDs within the different cannabidiols that come out of the plant in the different extracts. So sometimes people don't see the benefits from them. I think it's one of those things, like with everything, things come in and out of fashion. I know people who have had a lot of benefit with it, but I would wonder how much benefit they're getting compared to if we were able to have a whole plant extract, Not necessarily. See, that's also the problem with smoking nowadays of weed, or it's like the THC is increased in the way they grow the plant, so you can get more of a high off it. So people want to, if people are buying it to get high, they want a good strain or something. I'm not really sure how it works, but
are you sure you know how it works?
Well, I did live in Oregon for a while where it grows, so this is where my research has come from. But yeah, it's
I just bought CBD oil last week.
Did you?
After much deliberation, but I had an experience, and I did something. You see, the thing is, what I did is actually illegal, so I don't know if I should talk about it. I don't know. Can you, if you say something that you did was illegal on a podcast and it's listened to, can you get arrested in retrospect?
Oh gosh, we're treading into murky waters now, aren't we?
Murky waters. I tell you what, I won't tell that story because I don't want to get arrested, just in case. But what I will say is my experience with THC has not been good.
See, again, this is the problem, I think, is because it's such a high amount of THC in the plant nowadays, rather than having it as a whole plant kind of extraction in the way that it should be, with a balance of the two, as well as all the other kind of compounds. One thing I've tried recently is there's a hemp shop in Capel Street in Dublin, and they sell really great juiced hemp. So it's kind of these green. You can get them they're in the freezer, and they're like green kind of like ice cubes of the hemp plant, and it's juiced down. But the hemp plant has, very low levels of THC in it and higher CBD. As far as I'm aware, I'm not really a huge expert in this, but this is my understanding of it. And so it's more of a whole plant extract because it's just a juice of the leaves, but you're still getting a really, really small amount of the THC, so maybe it works better within the body. So that's been an interesting thing that we've been trying.
What product is that? What's it called again?
It's hemp juice. It's frozen hemp juice.
You just drink it?
Yeah, so it comes out in these ice cubes and you just kind of I kind of add some water to it and let it melt and then
it has a bit
knock it back.
It has a bit of THC in it.
Small amount, yeah. But I mean, I had them, I was kind of experimenting with them and one evening we tried 8 cubes of it, and we still didn't feel any high off it whatsoever, so it's not, that's kind of the max you would ever really take in a day,
Yeah.
But there is a lot of fear out there, I think, and prejudice against anything that kind of is seen as a drug or, that it might be bad in some way for us, because of the psychoactive components. But there's also such incredible research out there on all these other psychoactive plants that people use in controlled circumstances, and they're very helpful. It's not something I do as a herbalist. It's not something I'm trained as, but my kind of go-to is whatever plants are the gentlest and easiest and safest to use. They're the ones that are best to use with clients,
Especially until cannabis becomes legalized in Ireland, which it's only a matter of time before it will, because it's outrageous that you can go and buy a bottle of vodka anywhere and drink it, but you can't buy a plant. I mean, I know that's a completely different topic, but I just think that there's this stuff called the Rick Simpson oil, and my friend Kevin Boyle may have bought it once, and but the thing is, THC doesn't suit everyone. I mean, I've smoked weed before loads of times, like especially when I was younger, and it just doesn't suit me. I think some people's chemistry in their body, like the way some people are bad drunks. When I get drunk, I'm like happy as Larry and chatting away. If I smoke weed, I am just a big dope.
Yeah.
I can't say anything.
And that's fair enough. Yeah, and that's why everything that herbalists everything that holistic herbalists do, let's say everything that I do as a naturopath and herbalist, is individualized medicine. So, it's not just smoking weed, it's everything that people eat. For some people, maybe bananas are really good for them to eat, but for other people, maybe bananas cause a lot of mucus for them and it's too damp for their damp constitution. It's with every plant and every medicine that I would offer to people, we look completely at their constitution, at like how hot or cold their bodies might be, at so many different things to make sure it suits that one person at that time. Because maybe someone is taking let's say the example of meadowsweet that we just said there, which is, it's anti-rheumatic for like rheumatic pains, and it's for the digestive system, and it's also has the salicylic acid, which is a mild kind of pain reliever in there. But maybe it's good for them 1 month, and then the next month they're dealing with another issue and they don't need that anymore,
Yes,
so
it's so individual, isn't it? Like
Absolutely.
You said, like diet. But the reason why I got interested in the cannabis is because I have people in my life that I really love who suffer from depression and like bad crippling depression, and these people that I really love would never. They're not familiar with that world. They don't know about marijuana, cannabis, whatever you want to call it. So I was actually making myself a guinea pig because from what I read, the research I did, things like magic mushrooms or psilocybin mushrooms and cannabis can be used as therapy to show the person that there is a different way to think about your life just for that moment, and then not to stay on the drugs, but just to experience that high, that expansion of consciousness, and then hopefully they have a realization that they're not alone and there is a lot more to live for. So like I said, I was treating myself like a guinea pig.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the same. I do exactly the same with all the different plants I take and try.
Yeah, but and even with say psilocybin mushrooms, I mean you can get them in Wicklow. If you can actually pick them and eat them in Wicklow, but yet it would be illegal to sell. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just, I guess it's just the times that we're living in at the moment. There's, you know, I guess I don't want to go too much into my conspiracy theories that I might have, but, you know, there is a lot of...
I like conspiracy. Who doesn't like a conspiracy theory?
You know, there's a lot of control from the pharmaceutical industry, and there things like mushrooms that might grow in the grass in Wicklow, and plants like that I would use in herbal medicine, like dandelions, or, you know, things that grow nettles on the side of the street. They can't be patented, you know, and that's something that people aren't happy with. And, you know, then you look at places like Oregon, where I used to work at a herbal medicine farm there, and they had recently legalized marijuana for medicinal purposes, and later for public consumption if you had the right cards or whatever. But again, it goes into, you know, they start looking at ways they can standardize it so that they can have companies can patent certain things, you know. Yeah. And
Siobhán, that to me, that's like you're saying it's conspiracy. To me, that's common sense.
Absolutely, no, it is. It's complete common sense. But then I guess the conspiracy comes in is how far are they willing to go to kind of brainwash people into thinking, you know, that these things are bad. You know, you have, like, in America in the 60s, you know, Nixon had this war on drugs, and you had this hippie movement where people were becoming more free-loving, and they're, you know, more, like you said, open consciousness and things, and people see that that's, you know, anti-control, and you know, so
I think this is so important because we believe too much that the government have our best interest at heart. Whereas you could say that the government are looking to control us, and let's say, for example, marijuana. I mean, there's photographs or video footage of, I think it's Henry Ford. They have a car made out of hemp, and he's hitting the bonnet with a sledgehammer, and it won't break. So hemp is can be used for so many different things. But yet, when you hear the word hemp, because it's been demonized by mainly the American government, it's calling it marijuana. It's essentially giving it a negative connotation to do with Mexicans, and Mexicans are smoking marijuana and assaulting our women. But this and that has carried over to English Irish culture, where we think that if you smoke weed, you're lazy or you're a loser. But the ultimate, to me, the reality is, if you're a loser, for want of a better word, that's a horrible term, you're probably going to be a loser anyway. And if you're not addicted to marijuana, you'll be addicted to cheeseburgers or whatever it is.
Yeah, one of the acceptable forms of addiction, like alcohol in Ireland, for example.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. But I'm not a fan of. I mean, I don't take anything now. Like the most exciting I get is herbal tea.
You do. I love it.
But never say never. I mean, I am definitely in my lifetime going to do a psychedelic experience again. I mean, I've done a lot when I was in my 20s, but maybe something to do with my girlfriend or a family member, where we go away with the shaman and we have a ceremony. That type of thing really interests me.
Yeah.
But again, that, say ayahuasca, for example, I believe they do ceremonies in Ireland, but they're not legal, are they?
Not as far as I'm aware, but there seems to be, it's not something that I've experienced or I've taken part in yet, not saying I wouldn't, but there seems to be a lot of nearly ayahuasca tourism kind of stuff that goes on, you know, where you've got people paying a lot of money to come for an event because they want to have this experience or whatever it might be, because they might be travelling, or maybe I'm not sure, I haven't looked into it at all what's done in Ireland. It's something you want to really honour, like you say, you know. I'm not saying whether it's good or bad, but it's something that deserves a lot of respect, because these plants are really powerful. Because a lot of time people think like, oh, you know, because it's a plant-based medicine, in some ways it's better than, you know, pharmaceuticals, or it's not as dangerous, there's less side effects. But they still, like, plants are still, you know, plants can kill you by eating them. There's lots of poisonous plants out there too, and there's plants that have side effects. And so those are things that we want to be aware of. So they're all, like, they really need to be treated with respect, I think plants do. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's funny.
Everyone needs to go into it. Yeah, we've got these different extremes. You have people who are like, oh, I wouldn't touch any of that plant-based stuff because there's no science to back it, and I'm going to stick with my pharmaceuticals. And then there's other people who are like, oh, plants are much safer and much better, so I'm going to only do plants, and I'm going to, not worry about anything because it's natural. Mm-hmm. But just because it's natural doesn't necessarily mean it's good either. You can, take plenty of poisonous berries off trees around Dublin that are, exactly. Natural, that will kill you.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? Yeah. We're talking about addiction and food, like we mentioned earlier. Do you have, and I was chatting to my girlfriend about this during the week. We actually got into an argument about it, kind of, which is because it's food is such a personal thing. God, if you and I'm pretty strict about what I eat, and I. Because I know what it's like to be overweight, overwhelmed, and just eat, not actually not having the education to know what was right to eat for me, just not knowing really. Yeah. So, but my point was that I think a lot of us are addicted to food, some foods. And we don't realise it. We think it's almost like a joke, like, oh, I'm being a bit naughty, I'm gonna have another donut. Like, okay, that is kind of funny and that's fine, but when does it become being a bit naughty, and when does it cross the line into an addiction? Have you experienced people that come to you with, would you call it like food addictions or eating disorders, that type of thing? Yeah,
it's huge. It's a huge issue, and again, it's like you say, it's kind of a jokey thing for some people, but it's a very serious problem. The addiction to alcohol that we have in this country is, another thing that's kind of swept under the rug. If you ask someone to, not drink for a month or something, they're like, oh, I could never. As soon as you think you couldn't quit something, that's an addiction. It's the same with coffee. If you ask a client, that you need to quit coffee, the people who say, okay, that's no problem, they can go back to drinking their coffee every now and then or once a day or whatever it might be. But again, it's when you have that huge, strong reaction that I couldn't live without this, which a lot of people feel about their coffee or maybe their sugar or their cheese or their meat or whatever it might be, then that's when it can be labelled as an addiction, There's loads of amazing work being done. If you look at the research on food addiction, it's huge. There's, I've heard this one study where I don't really agree with animal studies at all, but there's a study which was done on rats where the rats were offered heroin and sugar, and they have both of them, and when given the opportunity, they'll go towards the sugar. That it can be more addictive than that. I don't know how that translates to humans. That's why, obviously the cruelty, but also what happens in a rat is very different than what happens in a human. But it's just interesting to note, I suppose.
Definitely.
And with it, say for example with dairy, it would be a big thing that I would often ask people to come off, because especially in our damp climate in Ireland, dairy is really bad for a lot of issues. It causes a lot of mucus, it can cause a lot of pain in joints, it can stop people from sleeping. But within cheese, there's actually a molecule called casomorphines. So they actually act in your body like morphine, because cheese is addictive. And science knows this, yet when someone says, oh, I have a friend who says that cheese is her bad boyfriend who she can never give up, and that's it, because people are addicted to it,
It's funny you say that, because I used to know, I had someone I know who's a vegan, and they said that there's maybe that's the same chemical or compound, whatever, in cheese that keeps the calf going back to the mother, and is this what keeps us going back to the cheese. Do you know anything about that?
I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but it makes sense.
It might be the same thing.
It could be the same thing, but
because morphine's soothing you, and because cheese. If you ask anyone who's gone from vegetarian to vegan, they'll say the one thing they miss the most is cheese.
Me too. I miss it so much. I'm vegan as well. I love cheese. I was out for dinner last night with my mum and my boyfriend, and my mum is a vegetarian, and I grew up as a vegetarian because of her, and I love her so much for that. It was, fabulous, but she still eats cheese, and it's the one thing she, isn't ready to give. And she had a lovely margherita pizza, and we got an amazing vegan pizza with vegan cheese on it, and it's lovely. But I still, at one point, I picked up the pizza and just smelt it, and I was like, oh, I still miss it. It smells so good. And then I remember why I stopped and how cruel it is to the cows or whatever it might be, and then I'm like, oh.
You see the oil gathering on the pizza, but when you see the oil there, you're like, I mean, cashew cheese is great. Don't get me wrong, but when you see that real cheese with the oil and the top, you're like, ooh, you know, it is. But yeah, as you said,
but it's pure addiction. Like
it's pure addiction. Yeah,
absolutely. Because when I think anyone logically, when they see what happens to, maybe if they're getting their milk from their cow that lives in their garden, they treat it really well. Might be different. But anyone who sees how, you know, we acquire these dairy products from the poor animals, it's, you know, most people would be like, oh, that's not nice. So
you are a strict vegan now?
I am, yeah.
And how long have you been vegan for?
I first went vegan about 10 years ago, and then I went back to being vegetarian for a bit because I was travelling with work a lot and it was difficult. And then I went back to being vegan, so kind of on and off, but full-time for at least the last 3 years or more, I'm not sure. Do
you see any downsides to being a vegan?
There can be. For me, no. I think it's great. But for some people, it can be challenging. You know, maybe it's too much of a step for someone to take because of their health at some point. I do know people who have been vegan and went back to eating meat because they felt they were not nourished or something like that. So I know that there are people like that, and I have nothing against that. People need to be able to listen to their bodies and know what they need. Yet at the same time, I think that no matter what someone's dealing with, we can work with them on a vegan diet, you know. A lot of what I do is I see vegan clients who kind of want to improve their nutrition, and there's a lot of ways we can look at getting the things they might be lacking from their carnivore diet they might have had before, and how we can bring that into a vegan diet. And then it's the funny thing about nutrition, really. There's so much research on both sides of the camp, and not even that, there's just two sides on every single side of the camp, because there's so much research out there saying that a plant-based diet can reverse diabetes, like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, all these major number one killers that we have nowadays, these lifestyle diseases. But it's not just a vegan diet, it's a whole food plant-based diet. And what I see a lot of nowadays, and which, you know, I get caught up in too, is this vegan junk food that's being created, because vegan is now which I think is wonderful, it's a marketing thing because it's becoming more popular. So the food companies try and, with their food scientists, make things more addictive and find that sweet spot that they like to hit for us, so we can keep coming back for more because it becomes addictive. Like Pringles, once you pop, you just can't stop. Like, they put it on the label, you know. But so a lot of the time I'll have vegans coming into me who are eating a lot of vegan junk food, and they really are eating a very bad diet. But that's the same across the board, whether you're vegan or not. So there is the potential for any diet to become a healthy diet, I think, you know. It
is bizarre, though, that when you go into some vegan places and they'll say, our ribs. I'm like, your ribs? What are the ribs? Oh, they're made of tofu. Just call it marinated tofu.
I know what you mean, but at the same time, so I ate meat a little bit when I was a kid, and my mum never ate meat, and I stopped eating meat because I really did not like the taste of meat. I thought it was disgusting. They thought the idea of it was disgusting. I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. So that's me. I find those kind of things like burgery, ribby, I find them really disgusting, and I won't touch them. But there are a lot of people who really like meat. They love the taste of it. They love eating it, but they find it's cruel and they want to transition to a vegan diet. So for them, being able to feel like they're getting ribs, but knowing it doesn't have the same, you know, animal murder behind the background of it, they can go in and enjoy their ribs, you know. I worked with a company last year on a project who create these, Moodley Manor, they're an Irish company that create these wonderful kind of burgers and chicken and different related things. They have a restaurant open now, and it really feels like, you know, going out for like bold kind of you know, junk food, you know. I really get that feeling. And so it's about being it for people who want to, maybe for ethical reasons, transition to a vegan diet. They can do that, and they can still go out and have their treats. So I have nothing against it. I think it's good, but it is something that a lot of people will say is like, why don't you just call it tofu? Well, you know, some people still want to eat ribs, but they just don't want to contribute to the system.
Yeah, it's that thing of spoiling yourself a little bit and when you go out. Just to talk about, going back to supplementation. So I assume you're referring to things like B12.
Yeah, so B12 is something that we have to supplement as vegans, B12 is also something a lot of meat eaters should supplement with, because it's very low in our diet in general.
Why?
The way our soil is one of the things. When you're eating meat, is the animals synthesize the B12 in their bodies, and we can get it from them through that. But a lot of the nutrients within our soil are depleted now. We don't eat the same. Even if we're buying like organic spinach, it's maybe not the same as organic spinach you could have got, which was just called spinach because there was no alternative, say 100 years ago, because the soil compounds are different because things are mass produced and maybe shipped for a long period of time and things like that. So it's not just necessarily, say, B12. B12 is something that we do take, and we take it as a synthesized form usually. But vitamin D in Ireland, say, is a huge one, because of the lack of the sunshine, but also to do with how we can, some people don't synthesize it within their bodies properly. So it depends. With B12, say, some people, you need to have a thing called intrinsic factor to convert your B12 and to utilize it, I suppose. But some people don't produce that intrinsic factor, so they can't take it. They'll have to take it in drops or in an injection instead of through a supplement form that goes through the stomach. So it's so different for everybody, we really need to. That's why medicine in general needs to be so much more specific rather than this one size fits all that we've kind of gotten into. So it might be B12 or something like vitamin D, but it might be something, like for some people it might be iron, some people might have too much iron. A lot of people, iodine is a big issue. If people are eating too many soy products, the soy can kind of leach iodine out of our systems, so we need to supplement with more iodine, which a lot of the time I wouldn't use so many supplements in the form of bottles. I would balance the diet, so I'd maybe get them to eat more seaweed, which is like, I just love seaweed so much. I'm so obsessed with it, and it's like we live on this island that's surrounded by seaweed, and it's good quality seaweed, like if you can get it from the Atlantic, compared to the stuff that, like, when I worked in Oregon, we would go and get seaweed off the coast, the northern coast of California, and you have to be really careful because they've got that drift from Fukushima.
Ooh.
So exactly. So, our waters are becoming so polluted nowadays, but we're really lucky with what we've got here in Ireland. I think it's our biggest untapped resource is seaweed. Like everyone needs to eat seaweed, and it makes you feel like a mermaid too. So that's a bonus.
Well, there's these little pots of seaweed that you can buy, and they're about €1,000 per pot. No,
this is seaweed. Isn't that the brand? I think they're. Yeah, I know the guy who runs it.
I don't. Yeah, maybe, but it's like they're delicious.
Yes, so
and they've
yummy.
got sesame seeds on top. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Seaweed.
No, I think it's something different. I'm thinking of flakes.
Okay.
That you put in food.
Oh right.
Never mind.
No, this is like kind of like moist, wet seaweed that you get in a little pot.
Yeah.
And it is unreal, but it's very expensive.
Yeah.
But supposedly the reason why we're an island, but yet we don't eat a lot of fish, we eat a lot of land mammals or land animals, is because it was considered that if you had land, then you could have animals on the land, but peasants would eat fish. Whereas if you went to someone's house and they served you pig or cow, it was like a big compliment because they could afford to keep those animals. Whereas, like I said, fish and sea products are considered like anyone can take them and harvest them. So it's you're right, it is a massively untapped resource. Totally. That seaweed. Yeah. I hardly eat any seaweed at all. I actually think that supplements in general, I reckon, I was walking past this place in Smithfield and it's like protein shop and protein bars and casein or casein.
Yeah, casein, yeah.
Casein. And all this stuff that reminded me of when I was a personal trainer. And I thought to myself, I wonder if in 30 years people are going to look back at that and go, can't believe people are so gullible buying protein shakes and thinking like that actually is good for you, unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, protein is, oh gosh. There's a really great book called Proteinaholic, which people should check out. But protein, it's one of those things that's been fed to us by...
Nice pun.
Yeah, oh, there you go. I didn't even realise I was making it. It's been fed to us by corporations and by the media and by different lobby groups and things like that. We don't need that much protein. I swear to God, if anyone asks me again, where do you get your protein? It drives me crazy. I get protein in Avocados have 2 grams of protein for every 100 grams. That's still protein, even though it's not a protein-rich food. Do you know what I mean? There's protein in broccoli. There's protein in so many things. Protein in broccoli is a funny one because people often say there's more protein in broccoli than steak, but it's per 100 grams, you know, but you're never going to eat the heaviness of a steak. I suppose you probably wouldn't eat that much broccoli in one sitting. So you don't necessarily get the same amount of protein. But when we're looking at, like, I suppose you as a personal trainer, you might be more even familiar with this than me, but when we're looking at kind of macros and this and that within nutrition, you're looking at more of a balance rather than a specific amount that you want to reach of grams per day. It's, you know, if you're eating, you know, 10 grams of protein, but you're eating so much sugary junk food, that's, you know, going to be different than if you're only eating 10 grams of protein and then the rest of the day you're living on water. Yeah. Do you know, it's all about the balance between our nutrients. Yeah. So I just find the protein one very funny, but really we don't need as much protein as we think we need. Protein is very important, but we don't need to live on like a diet full of loads of protein all the time and take extra protein shakes.
Yeah, this thing of if it fits your macros, what about your micros? You know, what about your vitamins, your minerals? Like when I worked in personal training for about 5 minutes till I realised I was like just completely didn't fit in, like, you know, the skinny guy eating his tofu. But they'd be talking about the other lads, the trainers, about how many grams of protein they've had that day. Oh, it's been 2 hours since I ate last. I've got to eat again. I'm like, this is no way to live. This is not a life. What do you do? What's your objective? What's your intention? Are you like one of the guys? He was not a poser. He was a bodybuilder. So what happens is, they essentially are preparing for a show. If you were to look at him day to day, he looks like a normal fella. But then he'll have this one picture on Facebook of him shredded, where you can see like every vein. He's painted his skin brown, and he's flexing. And I think, so you've done all of that. I'm probably going to get a bit of hate for this from people who are trainers, who are bodybuilders, but whatever. You've done all of that just to get a photograph of you with your veins popping out and with paper thin skin. Like what? So I just think that mentality of treating food like fuel, like coal you're putting in, and I actually think that is an eating disorder, in my opinion. You're not finding balance, as you said.
This is it. Like, I mean, there's 2 sides of it. If that's something that people want to do, then good for them. They can do that. But as long as they're kind of able to approach it in a healthy way, that they know they're going to do this really intense thing for a short period of time, and then go back to eating a healthy, balanced diet. You know, if, you know, some people maybe want to push their bodies to the extreme and climb a mountain. That's not really good for your body. It's going to put you under a lot of stress, let's say. Yeah, but it's not necessarily bad stress for your body. You just need to know that you need to recover afterwards. So I think it can be possibly done in a healthy way. But, you know, it's also like the opposite side of it, where you might eat healthy most of the time and you go on holidays and you eat nothing but junk food and drink loads, and it's a week of holiday because you're going on a mad one. I don't know. People do that and then come back and have a really healthy diet, and overall they're very healthy people. So it varies, I guess. I think if there's that level of obsession with food all year round, where everything is being measured all the time, it can be a common and healthy thing. But again, it's a lot of the time it's how we're reacting within our minds rather than actually the food that we're taking in. You know, like for some people, they could go out and have, you know, a really unhealthy meal and then go back to eating their healthy food the next day, and they wouldn't even think about it because it was just one meal. And other people might spend, you know, a week or more beating themselves up about it and running around. I can't believe I ate that. Why did I eat that donut? Why did I eat that thing? You know, and that the unhealthy stress response within our body is going to increase our cortisol response. And cortisol is, you know, caustic to so much of our bodies. It's potentially the guilt over eating something unhealthy can potentially be as bad as eating the thing and just getting on with it.
Yeah.
So there's so much more to all of this than we even understand.
Yeah. It's true.
So.
You could look at someone who's eating a donut a week, but if they're feeling good about it, like sod it, I'm having a donut, why not? But that's their health, their mental health is going to be so much better than someone who eats that donut and for the rest of the week they're berating themselves. So you're right. It doesn't tell you that much. It's the intention. It's also the same with alcohol. It's like, why are you drinking? Are you drinking to have fun, or are you drinking to forget, to numb something? With anything we ingest.
And also as well, even if you say when you mentioned alcohol, I thought of this, like a friend of mine, when I first was training to be a naturopath, sent me an article about how, we never need to detox because our livers detox and that's their job. I was like, yeah, obviously the liver is amazing. It regenerates and it detoxes and it sorts our body out for us. But if our liver is blocked and clogged in some way, and it's not processing things in the most efficient way that it could be, there's different phases of the liver detoxification, path 1 and path 2. So if you're eating things like that are nourishing your phase 2 pathway and you're not eating things that are nourishing the phase 1 pathway, then our livers mightn't be working properly. So maybe for 2 people who have the same even attitude towards eating the donut, one person could eat it and feel really, really bad, and one person could eat it and feel fine physiologically, not even mentally. So there's so much going in within our bodies that can change how we react to things, So it's just very interesting. I find it fascinating.
It's actually funny you mentioned the word detox, because I recently seen a yoga class advertised as yoga detox. And I think that's such a bastardization of yoga. I mean, when I as a yoga practitioner, yoga teacher, I am conscious of how, for want of a better word, authentic my yoga is. How true to the roots is it? And do I constantly re-examine my practice and the message I'm trying to share? So I'm not judging, but when you see things like yoga for 6-pack and all this type of stuff, and the thing is, Siobhán, actually, I've got to say this, right? I just thought of this the other day. I did a video about 2 years ago when I first started teaching, right? On YouTube. It's got 200,000 views. This video, right? But which would be nice, but it's a video that I'm not ashamed of, but I'm very embarrassed about.
Right.
It was a beer yoga video. So it's me teaching these stand-up comedians beer yoga, And it's actually quite a funny video because one of the people in the video got very drunk and fell over. But at that time, I just done my 200 hour, and no one would hire me because I just couldn't get a job. Sure. I thought, well, I need to make money because I've been, I got made redundant from my office job. But my point is that, like, I'm not saying, he cast the first stone, or whatever. But or is that the right saying? Or people in glass houses. Anyway, so I have bastardized yoga before. And which I'm not proud of, but so I'm just saying. But as you said, this whole thing of using words like detox, it gets people thinking it's misinformation, isn't it?
This is it. I mean, I wouldn't feel so bad about it with your beer yoga. I think I'm kind of the opinion that anything that gets people into yoga, whether it's maybe a beer yoga class or I teach a kind of yoga that I call wizard yoga, which could potentially by some seen as, how is this really yoga? But it's, it's about getting kids involved in yoga by going on a magical journey. And, I do it with adults too. They tap into their inner child and feel like they're wizards and witches casting spells. And it's a lot of fun, and we use wands and it's great. But, even something like beer yoga, if it's going to get someone who would never do yoga to try yoga, then maybe they'll bring it into their life in a healthier way. If a beer yoga class isn't going to be something you go to, every kind of Monday and Wednesday and Friday, because that would be really bad. Yeah. But if it's a one-off event, it's going to get more people interested in yoga, then why not? And yoga detox, I think the problem is the angle people are coming at it from. If they're selling yoga detox just so they can get more people to their studio or to book out a course, or, then maybe it's not the right, like, are they really trained to do that, but when I did my initial yoga training in India, and the place that I was training in, we did a lot of work with kriyas and, you know, you drinking all this water and then throwing it up again as a way of like cleansing the system. They're very much into this, like, as you might call it, yoga detox, only they call it kriyas and cleansing. And, you know, they would eat this cloth and put it all the way down into their stomach and then pull the cloth back out. I mean, that's not something I would be interested in doing. I think it's a bit extreme and it's not necessarily something we need in our modern culture. Maybe it was good back then when there was a lot of, you know, parasites or something in their foods or whatever it might be. But like detox was a big part of yoga, and a lot of the, especially when it comes into kriyas and these kind of like Kapalbhati breathing or anything like this, like it's very much to like to detox the lungs or whatever it might be, or to detox the sinuses, or like I do use yoga a lot within my naturopathy practice, because I am also a yoga teacher, and not all naturopaths are, so this is probably more unique to my practice. But you know, like I will give people different yoga poses that they can do, you know, a small routine they can do before bed or something like that. And maybe if someone's dealing with digestive issues, we would put in like a lot of twists that they would do in the morning, so that it would help to make them a bit more regular, because twists actually help with kind of detox and elimination by moving the body in that particular way. So it can be done. Again, what I do is I work individually with people, and I make sure that, and I'm also trained as a naturopath, so I can do that. I have that kind of crossover. When you have anyone coming into a generalized detox program, it can be a bit risky, because different people need different detoxes, you know, like some people, their skin is blocked, so they need things that are going to help them sweat, and other people need something to help, some sort of like laxative herbs that are going to help them to poop, and you know, but maybe it's going to be that they need a bulking laxative, like we talk about, like with flax seeds or something, because that'll help move things along. But maybe it's that they actually need a stimulant because they've got weaker bowels and they don't have the muscle tension there. So there's just so many different permutations for each person. So yeah,
I suppose, as you said, it's not a one size fits all, and sometimes to whatever gets you into that way of thinking, to looking after yourself. So it could be you go to yoga class for a detox because it's January, whatever, and then you like yoga and you carry on doing it. Next thing you know, you're studying to be a naturopath, or you're. This is it. So I mean,
when I began yoga, I did yoga when I was in sixth year for like stress, and then I find it very helpful for that. But then when I really got into yoga, that I was like doing everyday practicing, I started doing Bikram yoga, and I went to it because I heard it can help you lose weight and detox and you sweat loads, and I was like, cool, because that's my kind of personality. And especially back then, you know, I was studying politics and I was going to like rule the world and it was going to be wonderful, and so I got into yoga because I thought it was going to help me, you know, because it's that kind of intense kind of Bikram yoga, and I really do still like that kind of yoga, but it led me down this journey where then I went to India and I learned so much more about this practice that's so much more than just moving the physical body and sweating, and so it's whatever gets people onto the mat and into our class, I suppose, you know. It's whatever gets them, not even into our class, whatever gets them doing yoga online, or just learning more about it, sitting to meditate a little bit, whatever it might be, you know.
Or listen to this podcast, Siobhán.
Absolutely, that's a good idea. Absolutely.
Nice, Siobhán. So, Siobhán, if people want to know more about you, where would they go?
Well, so my business that I run is called the Nerdy Naturopath, because I'm a bit of a nerd. I love Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and things like that, and dress up. And anyway, so that's my business name, is the Nerdy Naturopath, and I have a website which is nerdynaturopath.com, and I'm on Instagram a lot, Facebook too, but more Instagram, so probably that's the best place. And then I teach yoga in Dublin, and then I do my naturopathy consultations in the Elbow Room, in the clinic there, so they can get in touch with me and come to my class, or come in for an appointment, or just follow my social media for fun recipes and nerdy things, I suppose.
That's great. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
There you go. That's all we've got time for, folks. Well, just a couple of things before I let you go. Firstly, if you're getting value from this podcast, if you find that it's really helping you, then please share it on your Instagram stories. Tag a friend who you think may also enjoy it and get some value. If you want to support directly, you can go to kevinboyleyoga.ie /support the Yoga Life podcast. Anyone who supports will get priority tickets for any events that I have. That includes retreats, workshops, and you can find more details of those events and when they are on my site. If you would like to support via our kind sponsor Apparel, then go to om.com/The Yoga Life Podcast, where they'll give you 15% off any of their apparel when you use the promo code Kevin. So is a company that I use myself. I wear the clothing. I know the guy that owns it. I know some of the people there, and they provide clothing that is sustainable, recycled fabrics, recycled paper packaging, and it really focuses on men's health. So they're doing a good thing. So if you'd like to be part of that and look good at the same time and look after the environment, check out And if you're listening before April 7th, last thing, if you're listening before April 7th, 2019, then you still have time to come to the Yoga Life Podcast Live, my first ever live event, being hosted at the Yoga Hub in Camden Court. And that's going to be on a Sunday evening with special guest Adam Husler. It's going to be a very small, intimate crowd. It's a very small audience where you'll have the chance to ask questions and actually be part of the podcast. So go to my site again, kevinboyleyoga.ie/events to see that and to RSVP. Thanks as always. Have a good week. Catch up with you next week.